Good morning or afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining our fifth annual State of Student Debt Summit. We are so honored to have you all here and taking some time out of your morning. We're going to let folks trickle in for a second, but for the intro part of this, we have our chat open. We'd love to hear where your name, where you're zooming in from, and there's going to be a lot of news and information, and it can all get kind of heavy sometimes. So if folks want to share some good news, we'd love to hear it before we get into all the things about student loan debt. So thank you again so much for joining us, and just let us know where you're calling from. And if you have any good news to share, we really want to hear it. So I'm Natalia Abrams. I'm the president here at Student Debt Crisis Center. We are a national advocacy organization with nearly 2 million supporters calling for fundamental reforms to student loan policies and an end to the student debt crisis once and for all. This has been going on far too long. We know for so many of you for decades upon decades, and we really work in tandem with our wonderful partners to try to change this system. We want to thank our funders at the NEKC Foundation, who has been providing support to us to bring this programming to you. Always want to just do a quick disclaimer that while the opinions presented in this workshop are from Student Debt Crisis Center alone and do not reflect the opinions of the foundation. And we are very honored today to be joined by some wonderful guest speakers from the National Consumer Law Center, the Department of Financial Protection and Innovation here in California, where I'm zooming in from. We have the ombudsperson from Connecticut as well. We have a wonderful speaker from Protect Borrowers, and also from the Debt Collective during our extended Q&A. So we're just so honored to be joined by such great guest speakers and partners in the fight to end this crisis. So let's do some quick housekeeping. Please use the Q&A function to ask your questions. Right now, we're asking folks to share in the chat, but once the workshop gets started, any questions that you have about the slide deck or what the speakers are presenting, the best way to get your questions answered is using the Q&A function. We have a lot of folks here to help try and answer your questions. And at the end of this workshop, or at the end of this hour for the second hour, we're going to take a full hour to answer as many questions as we can. All of the information shared on today's event, it pertains to the current guidelines and rules as of today. So today is March 31st, 2026. If you're paying attention to the student debt space, things are rapidly changing all the time. And so we just want to make sure you know that it's today's guidance that we are giving you, and we will always continue to update you with anything new. Also, there's a lot of information, as I mentioned at the top. So a recording will be emailed to anyone that's here on the workshop or that registered for the webinar. So, if you have to rewind back, go through different sections of this, we completely understand. You will get more information in about 24 hours from our team. And lastly, we are not financial counselors or attorneys. While there may be some attorneys on this call, they're not your attorneys, so we cannot give individual advice, but we are here we are advocates and experts here to help you to the best of our ability. So today, we're going to cover quite a lot, federal updates, including the recent news of the Department of Education moving the student loan portfolio to the Department of Treasury. The SAVE plan news, what's going on with SAVE on a valuable education plan, and the announcement we got on Friday, the major overhaul that begins on July 1st for student loan borrowers and for lending limits, public service loan forgiveness, what that means with the new rule, default and delinquency, and how you can take action. And then, as I mentioned, an extended Q&A session, because we know you all will have a lot of questions with what we're going to cover. And just a quick scope of what we're talking about when we say the student debt crisis. We have almost $1.7 trillion, that's trillion with a T, in student loan debt. There's, roughly 43 to 45 million student loan borrowers. That's you taking your time to be here on the call today, dealing with that total amount of debt. We know that there's been a lot of news about backlogs where, you're applying or waiting, especially for your public service loan forgiveness buyback applications, or for your forgiveness on public service loan forgiveness, or just to change into repayment plans. So something, we just want to keep in mind that full scope as we dive into all of this information. And with that, I'm going to toss it to the wonderful Selena Damian with DFPI here in California. Selena?
Thank you, Natalia. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. It's my pleasure to be here today. My name is Selena Damian, and I am the California Student Loan Ombudsperson, and I'm based out of the California Consumer Protection Agency, or the DFPI. So it's my pleasure to be here today to share some information. I will start with federal updates. Next, please. The first major update is the announcement of the student loan portfolio that will be transferred from the Department of Education to the U.S. Treasury. Last week, the department announced this agreement that was signed, and the transfer, there's a lot of unknowns, but here's what we do know. The transfer will take place in three steps. During step one, Treasury will assume operational responsibility for collecting on defaulted federal student loan debt. They will help defaulted borrowers enroll in rehabilitation or return to good standing, and will assume operational responsibilities for the default resolution group, DRG, which is the student loan servicer for borrowers in default. During step two, the U.S. Treasury will begin to provide operational support for non-defaulted federal student loan debt. And then during step three, they will support FSA's other functions. So these will include administration of the FAFSA and Pell Grants. We highly recommend that borrowers save and document all their student loan information and communications from student loan servicers and Department of Education. Borrowers with defaulted loans should continue to visit myedddebt.ed.gov, which the email will be provided shortly, and they will be receiving updates. So it's very important to have updated contact information. Next, please. Major changes are coming in July 2026 as a result of the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. The changes that we will be discussing today were included in the act, but still need to be finalized through a neg reg or negotiated rulemaking process. We anticipate that the rules will be finalized May of 2026 and will be implemented July 1st of 2026. These changes, some of these changes include new lending limits, phasing out repayment plans for current borrowers. These include the income contingent repayment and pay as you earn, limited repayment options for borrowers with new loans or those with loans dispersed on or after July 1st, 2026. And then the rolling out of new repayment plans, including the repayment assistance plan and the new standard plan. Next, please. As Natalia mentioned, it's important to uh, keep in mind that there is a backlog at the Department of Education. There's over 500,000 backlogged IDR applications and over 88,000 backlogged PSLF applications. So we're seeing a lot of delays, borrowers with questions, borrowers that are waiting on responses or have submitted multiple applications. So it's very important that you do not submit multiple applications unless you submitted an IDR application requesting the lowest monthly payment or you applied for the SAVE plan. In that case, you will need to submit another application as those were set aside and are not being processed. IDR plan applications with the IRS integration, so where you automatically uh, submit your tax information or income information through the IRS, those are being processed quickly, and we would recommend using that system as opposed to manual income documentation. If possible, we understand there are situations where you are not able to do the automated system, but we are seeing that those move faster than the manual documentation applications. As always, it's really important to make sure that your personal information, email address, phone number, and address is up to date. Studentaid.gov is going to be your main portal. Uh, Sometimes with the changes happening so quickly, with guidance changing so quickly, service transfers, it just servicer transfers, so many things taking place. We know that borrowers sometimes don't get the information. So this is a way to stay updated. If you are having trouble logging in or resetting your password, here is the information and a link where you can get assistance for that. Next, please. You can log on, when you log on to studentaid.gov, you will see this new dashboard under the My Loans section. If you view My Loans, you can see if your loans are enrolled in different repayment plans. You can find the status of your loans, whether they're in repayment, forbearance, default, etc. This is a really important link, and this information will be needed if you are contacting someone for assistance. So whether you contact me or another state ombuds or advocate, an attorney, someone to assist you, they will need this information in order to provide assistance. So it's best to have that before you contact anyone for assistance. Save plan news. Next, please. Recent court rulings have effectively ended the SAVE plan. As a result, Ed announced that SAVE forbearance will end soon, starting on July 1st. And even now, we know that servicers are issuing formal 90-day notices requiring borrowers to switch to a different plan or be automatically, or they will, if they don't switch within the 90 days, they will automatically be placed on the standard repayment plan. The effective end date of the SAVE forbearance is September 30th, 2026, which is 90 days from July 1st. Some borrowers, if you are receiving email notifications, be mindful of the date on your notice. So although this September 30th, 2026 might be the ending date of the forbearance, you do need to check the date on your notice and what your 90-day window is. So it's again really important to keep those addresses updated, contact information updated, because a lot of this information may be confusing for borrowers. So you want to see what is on your notice. Right now, we have more than 7 million borrowers that are enrolled in SAVE and are on the SAVE forbearance. So that means no payments are required. Your interest started accruing on August 1st, 2025 for those on the SAVE forbearance. And as I mentioned, right now, no one can apply for or enroll in SAVE anymore. Next, please. Some of you may be wondering, wasn't the SAVE plan supposed to go away closer to July 1st? Well, it was, but because it is being attacked or challenged in the courts and legislatively, now the One Big Beautiful Bill Act has stated that, at first stated that SAVE would be phased out July 1st, 2028 at the latest, along with the two other plans. However, due to recent court rulings, SAVE is now being phased out much earlier than anticipated. That's why there's all this back and forth. But as of right now, the latest court ruling is what stands, and which is why borrowers need to be on the lookout for those notices for next steps and then your 90-day window. Next, please. Be careful with misinformation. We have seen servicers tell people that they need to consolidate to get out of SAVE. This is incorrect, and you do not need to consolidate. You can just switch to an IDR plan, excuse me, without having to do that. Here is what borrowers can do right now. Really important to find out which repayment plan options you qualify for. You can use tools such as the FSA loan simulator And our partners at EdCap New York have a really great repayment simulator as well to estimate your monthly payments across existing repayment plans. It's important to note that most plans that you will have to move into will most likely have a higher payment, as Save was one of the most affordable plans. So be aware of that. Whether or not you switch out of Save right now or closer to your deadline, it's up to you. It's a personal decision. If you are closer to the PSLF or IDR credit thresholds, or you are trying to earn forgiveness credits, you may want to consider switching out now. If you want to wait until your notice and you want to wait closer to the deadline or your 90-day window in order to budget or pay off other debt, funnel money into other, payments that you may have, that may be for you, but it really depends on your goal. But again, that window, that those dates are going to be very important, and really start looking at monthly payment amounts so you can start planning. One other reason why you may want to change out earlier is for your tax filing purposes. If you haven't filed 2025 taxes and 2024 AGI was lower, that could be used when switching out of IDR. So that's another thing to keep in mind. Next, please. These are the tools available to calculate your estimated monthly payments. As I mentioned, just keep in mind that those payments will probably be different and higher than they were on the Save plan. Next, please. And these are some of the tools, the FSA loan simulator, and then the EdCap repayment plan calculator as well. And now I will hand it over to my colleague.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Selena. Hello, everyone. My name is Sabrina Ashley Sarasaris, and I'm the Special Projects Director at Student Debt Crisis Center. And we're going to go over all of the major student loan overhaul features that are coming in July. We're going to start with lending limits. There are a few new lending limits and caps for borrowers. So we'll start with the new aggregate lifetime loan limit of $257,500 for all borrowers. And this is regardless of any amounts repaid or forgiven. However, that does exclude Parent Plus loans. I've seen several questions in the chat already about Parent Plus loans and what to do in terms of funding and all the new lending caps. So this aggregate lifetime loan limit does exclude Parent Plus loans. Existing borrowers enrolled full-time in a program by June 30th of this year, who also took out a direct loan for that program, may be exempt from these new borrowing caps for up to 3 years. That's a lot to unpack, so feel free to rewatch this section. And just keep in mind that this is coming this summer. So as you're looking at maybe your children applying for loans or yourself applying for loans, just understand these loan limits. So very quickly in this chart here, we do have the different loan limits for graduate programs, professional programs, and Parent Plus loans. So for graduate students, it's going to be $20,500 per year with a $100,000 total lifetime limit. For professional programs, you're going to have a $50,000 per year limit with a $200,000 total lifetime limit. And then for Parent Plus loans, you'll have $20,000 per year per dependent as your cap, with a max of $65,000 per dependent. And again, this all begins on July 1st, 2026. Okay, a quick snapshot of the current repayment system. This applies to all current borrowers who have loans issued or consolidated before July 1st, 2026. We have the standard plan, which is the plan that you are sort of dumped into automatically when you enter repayment if you don't apply for a different plan. Then we have fixed alternative plans like the graduated repayment plan, extended repayment repayment plan and the extended graduated repayment plan. Then we also have several income-driven repayment plans like income contingent repayment or ICR, income-based repayment, old and new, or this is also called IBR. The pay-as-you-earn or pay plan. We have saving on a valuable education or the SAVE plan, and then we also have repayment assistance plan or RAP. Again, these options will remain available to borrowers who only have loans issued or consolidated before July 1st, 2026. Reminders about these repayment options. Unconsolidated Parent Plus loans must be consolidated and issued before July 1st to access IDR plans. On July 1st of this year, 2026, the RAP plan will become available to all borrowers. So RAP is not out quite yet, but it will be in July. And Parent Plus loans will not be able to apply for RAP, and this includes consolidation loans containing Parent Plus loans. And then a reminder that income contingent repayment and the pay-as-you-earn repayment plans will phase out by July 1st of 2028 at the very latest. They could phase out earlier, but we will keep you all posted, and that is due to the Big Beautiful Bill Act. Okay, Parent Plus loans. There is a very fast approaching deadline coming up, which is tomorrow. This is an unofficial deadline, but this is our recommended deadline, and this is in terms of consolidation. So Parent Plus loans have to be consolidated in order to access any income-driven repayment plans. If you have unconsolidated Parent Plus loans and you want to access these income-driven repayment plans, you do need to act quickly. And that is to apply for consolidation by April 1st of 2026. So that is tomorrow. If your loans are not consolidated and dispersed before July 1st of 2026, you are going to lose access to income-driven repayment plans. So that's why we are suggesting this April 1st deadline to give you all time to apply for consolidation and enroll in the IDR plan all in one spot at studentaid.gov and have enough time for that loan to be consolidated and dispersed back to you. Okay, the new repayment system starting for new loans in July 1st or July of 2026, you're going to have two options, the new standard or RAP plans. This applies to anyone who takes out a new loan or consolidates an existing loan on or after July 1st, 2026. If you don't have July 1st memorized by now, you will by the end of this webinar. That is like the magical date. Some reminders about this new repayment system is that borrowers are going to be limited to these options and they will not be able to access older plans. So that old snapshot that we just went over with multiple IDR plans, those are not going to be available to borrowers who take out new loans or consolidate their loans starting on July 1st of 2026. If you only have pre-July 1st loans, but you decide to take on or consolidate even just one loan on or after July 1st, you will lose access to those old repayment plan options and only have access to these two new options, the new standard or the RAP plan. So by taking out a new loan after July or consolidating a loan after July, you will essentially move your entire portfolio from the old repayment system to this new repayment system. So what do these new repayment plans look like? We have the new standard plan, and this is set to begin on July 1st of 2026. It's only available to borrowers with a new loan on or after that date. The new standard plan is not a qualifying plan for public service loan forgiveness. So that is very important. I'll say that one more time. The new standard plan is not a qualifying plan for public service loan forgiveness. Parent Plus loans issued or consolidated on or after July 1st, 2026 are only going to have access to the new standard plan. They're not going to have access to IDR options, and that includes WRAP. So you can see that the new standard plan depends on your loan balance. So if you have under $25,000 in loans, your repayment term is going to be 10 years. But if you have over $100,000 in loans, your repayment term is going to be 25 years. So it really depends on how much you're taking out. Then for the WRAP plan, or the repayment assistance plan, this is also slated to begin on July 1st, 2026. The repayment term here is going to be 30 years or 360 IDR credits. And this is considered an IDR plan because it is going to be based off of your income. So who qualifies for this plan? It's going to be available to all borrowers with direct loans, except for Parent Plus loans. Some important notes about the WRAP plan are that $0 payments are no longer going to exist. There's going to be a minimum of $10 monthly payments. WRAP is going to waive any interest that's not covered by the borrower's monthly payment, and it will reduce the borrower's principal by up to $50 if the payment does not do that. And then the very important income feature here is that WRAP is going to be based off of your AGI, or adjusted gross income, and that's going to be 1 to 10% of that, depending on your income. And it's going to be less generous than the SAVE plan and more expensive than other IDR plans for lower income folks. And you can see how it plays out in this screenshot here. So if you do make less than $10,000 a year, you'll be at that $10 monthly minimum payment range. If you're somewhere near $40,000 to $50,000, it will take 4% of your adjusted gross income and put you at about $133 to $166 per month for your payment. If you're making over $100,000, it's going to take that 10% of your adjusted gross income, and you'll be at about $833 or more dollars per month for your monthly payment. Awesome. So I'm going to go ahead and toss it to Aisa from Protect Borrowers to get us through this next section.
Thank you so much, Sabrina, and hi, everyone. My name is Aisa Canchola-Bañez, and I am Policy Director for Protect Borrowers. Very grateful for the chance to join you all today, and huge note of appreciation to our partners at SDCC for putting this event together, and really allowing this to be an opportunity to share very important and actionable information to all of y'all today. So thank you very much, Sabrina, for that. What I'm going to discuss is the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program. Now, I know many of us on this call follow student loans very closely and may actually be counting on earning cancellation under the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program. But before we dig in, I did just want to start with kind of like a level setting description of the program. So the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program, or PSLF, was created by Congress and signed into law by President George W. Bush back in 2007. The program provides debt relief for borrowers with federal direct loans and are employed in qualifying public service employment occupations and have made 10 years of qualifying payments. So the key word here, of course, is qualifying. In order to be eligible for PSLF, you must work for a qualifying employer, and you must make qualifying payments for 10 years. And we can go into more on that in depth into the next slide. It is important to note that, the requirement for 10 years of payments is cumulative, they don't have to be made in sequential order for that 10-year period. And so as I mentioned, the emphasis here is qualifying payments. And so these payments must be made on a qualifying loan. These include all direct loans. So that includes direct subsidized loans, direct unsubsidized, grad or Parent Plus loans, and a direct consolidation loan. Payments must also be made under a qualifying repayment plan. This includes the current 10-year standard plan or an IDR plan. These IDR plans can include income contingent repayment, or ICR, pay as you earn, or pay income-based repayment, IBR, or the new repayment assistance plan, or RAP, which Sabrina had gone through earlier in the presentation. And you must be employed at a qualifying employer. And that includes employment at all levels of government, so state, local, or federal government employment, or employment with a 501c3 or otherwise eligible nonprofit organization. Next slide, please. I will also note that the new tiered standard plan that will be available to borrowers who take on new loans after July 1 of 2026 will not be eligible for public service loan forgiveness. So if you are considering what options might be available to you after this July 1 deadline, that is something to note, that, in order to be eligible for public service loan forgiveness moving forward, if you are a borrower taking on new loans after this July 1 date, eligible or enrollment in RAP will be required in order to access the public service loan forgiveness program. So since in 2007, the PSLF program has had strong bipartisan support in Congress and across various administrations. However, last year, President Trump signed an executive order really to weaponize this program, and essentially disqualify public service employers or public service workers who are employed at organizations that are engaging in work that the Trump administration disagrees with. So the executive order that was signed last year directed Secretary McMahon to begin kind of a rulemaking process to make these changes to the program. That happened last spring and into the summer. And then last Halloween, the administration released its final rule. And this PSLF rule would essentially unlawfully allow the Secretary of Education to disqualify from PSLF any government or nonprofit employer working in, quote, substantially illegal activities. Under the rules, these activities would include groups working, groups such as, those that are working, those that are immigrant justice organizations supporting unaccompanied minors or protecting our undocumented neighbors. It would also include organizations providing gender-affirming care to minors. It could also include public universities with DEI policies on the books, and even state and local governments that are deemed sanctuary cities and not engaging in the administration's kind of ramped up immigration enforcement activities. We really see this rule as a continuation of the administration's attacks on civil society and organizations really working to support the most vulnerable and marginalized communities. And we know that states and local groups, and local governments and nonprofits rely on PSLF to recruit and retain employees that could be making much more money in the private sector. So we see this rule as an attempt to purge workers from these employers that are doing work that opposes the administration's agenda. So as soon as the rule was announced last Halloween, there were several different lawsuits announced challenging the rule, which would have gone into effect on July 1 of this year. These lawsuits include two on behalf of various coalitions of nonprofit organizations, including one that is being led by Protect Borrowers as well. And then even, cities and states attorneys general sued the administration over this rule. These lawsuits are currently ongoing. And so what is important to note is that, this rule is not currently in effect, but there are things that borrowers should know. So, if you are, if you are a worker at that has already received public service loan forgiveness, it's important to note that this rule, if it goes into effect, would be prospective in nature, which means you know, we will not see borrowers have their loans reinstated because of this rule if their employer is eventually deemed ineligible for PSLF. The effect that this rule would have would be on payments made in the future and after an employer is deemed ineligible. So we will not see people seeing their loans reinstated. You know, if a borrower is working for an employer who is deemed ineligible under the rule, that employer would be ineligible for 10 years. And so if you are employed at an organization that's deemed ineligible, the payments that you had made prior to that point would remain intact. However, future payments would not essentially be counted. Sabrina, or can somebody go to the next page as well, please? There we go. Okay, sorry about that. I forgot to shift over to the new slide. So very important to note, you know, this is something that would be this rule, if it were to go into effect, would have major repercussions for organizations working in these spaces. They would be deemed ineligible for 10 years. Unfortunately, there is no process for a borrower to appeal the decision on behalf of its employer. An employer would have an opportunity to comply with a corrective action plan and would have to work back and forth with the department. But you know, even with that, the employer would still lose eligibility for 10 years, and that would obviously have downstream effects on their employees. Past credits would remain intact, future payments would not be eligible, and the department would be required to provide notice to the employer and the employees should an employer lose their eligibility. So, you know, this has been a kind of a very long and drawn out process, but it is very important to note that this is still being challenged in the courts. We believe that this rule is unconstitutional, and both violates First Amendment protections of freedom of speech and freedom of association, as well as blatantly unlawful and out of, illegal based on the text of the Higher Education Act, which created the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program to begin with. So we believe strongly that this rule should not be allowed to go into effect, but should it go into effect and be allowed to go into effect by the courts, just wanted to leave borrowers with some things to just keep top of mind should they find themselves in a predicament working for an employer that could potentially lose eligibility. So with that, I am happy to turn it over to my fabulous colleague, Kira, with the National Consumer Law Center.
Thanks, Aisa, and thank you. I'm honored to be here with all of you. I am a student loan expert at the National Consumer Law Center. And hold on, I'm having a technical issue here. All right, so I am going to talk to you about what happens if you don't pay your federal student loans. And really, this comes up for folks who can't afford to pay. There are an estimated 9.2 million Americans who have defaulted on their federal student loans. That's almost a quarter of the federal student loan portfolio. And there are an estimated 3.27 million Americans who are delinquent, who have failed to make payments on their student loans. So if you are in default on your student loans, if you log into your account on studentaid.gov and you see a banner saying that your loans are in default, you are certainly not alone. And you have options to remove your loans out of default as well, which we'll talk about in just a sec. Next slide. So let's talk about the process. So how would one default on their federal student loans? Because this is one of the important ways that federal student loans are very different from other forms of debt. So the first day that you miss a payment, your loans are now delinquent, okay? But then if you miss 3 months or 90 days of payments, that's when you'll start to see the consequences. Once you're 90 days past due, the delinquency or failure to make those payments will show up on your credit report. At 270 days, which is at 9 months of missed payments, your federal student loan will be in default. And that is when the stakes really start to increase. Between 270 days to 360 days, your loan will stay with your non-default servicer, and they will transfer it to the government's default servicer so that the default servicer can put it into the defaulted loan databases. You have a narrow period of time between 270 days and 360 days to call your loan servicer and say, hey, I do not want to be in default. Please apply a retroactive forbearance to my account, or you could just ask to enroll in an IDR plan. Um, Once you hit 360 days, then your loans get transferred to the default servicer. And at that point, you can be subject to the government's collection powers. And again, this is one way that federal student loans are very different from other types of debt that you may have because the government has special collection powers it can use to collect all of your debt. So as soon as your debt is in default, the debt is what's called accelerated. So all of your debt becomes immediately due. That's principal and interest. And then the government can seize all of your tax refund. It can garnish your wages. It can also take some of your federal benefits like Social Security. In addition, when you are in default on your federal student loans, you are ineligible for other forms of federal credit. So you're eligible for federally backed mortgages, and you're also ineligible for small business association loans as well. Now, this is all really bad stuff. But there are things that you can do to remove your loans out of default as well, which we're going to talk about in just a second. I also want to clarify that your loans will remain delinquent until you take action. So you can either make up those missed payments, or you can ask that a deferment or forbearance be retroactively applied to bring your account current, or you can enroll in an IDR plan and then the servicer will automatically apply a forbearance to bring your account current. So if you haven't hit that 360 days and you haven't been transferred yet, you could call your servicer today and correct that default. Oh, one other important caveat, there is one loan type called a federal Perkins loan. They stopped being issued in 2018, but there the terms of default are slightly different. Federal Perkins loans can be placed in default after just one day of missed payments, but generally these are the rules for the student loan types that most folks have, which are federal family education loans, which were issued before 2010, and direct loans, which are issued today. Next slide, please. Now, like I mentioned before, if you find yourself in default, don't panic because more likely than not, you have options. There are 4 common ways that folks get out of default. First, you can repay your loan in full. Second, you can use what's called a loan rehabilitation, where you enter into an agreement with your lender to make 9 payments consecutively. That means in a row. And you negotiate how much those payments will be with your lender. And at the end of the 9 months, your account is taken out of default. You can also do what's called loan consolidation, where you take out a new federal student loan that pays off your defaulted student loans. And like I mentioned before, if your loan hasn't yet been transferred to the default servicer, you've missed 9 months of payments, but your current servicer still holds your loans, then you can call a servicer and ask for a retroactive forbearance, or you could ask to apply for an IDR plan. We've heard that folks have had a lot of success with that. However, that's not available to you if your loans have already been transferred to the default loan servicer. Next slide, please. So let's dive into these options for getting out of default, because I would love it if after today you told Sabrina and Natalia, I heard that how I could figure out if my loans were in default, and I got out of default after watching your presentation today. So first, loan rehabilitation. You make 9 on-time monthly payments over 10 months. So they have to be in a row, and you have to make a full on-time payment each month. You work with your servicer or the lender to determine the affordable monthly payment amount. Typically, it's going to be a percentage of how much income you make. Once you've made all of your payments, collections will stop if you're subject to collections, and your account is removed from default. Right now, you can only rehabilitate your loans once. In the future, you will be able to rehabilitate your loans twice. The other option we talked about before is loan consolidation, where you take out a new federal student loan to pay off your defaulted federal student loans. Um, and when you do that, you can consolidate just one loan, or you can consolidate multiple loans together into a new loan. When you are consolidating out of default, there's one additional step you have to take. You have to either submit an IDR application with your consolidation application, or you have to make three full on-time payments before consolidating. I'll be honest, for most people, submitting the IDR application is the best way to consolidate out of default. Now, the only time consolidation would not be available is if you already have just one direct consolidation loan. If you only have one direct consolidation loan, you cannot reconsolidate that loan. However, if you have a consolidation loan and other loans, then you can consolidate them together. A couple of really important tips here. So if you get a notice saying that your federal student loans are in default, please, 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 please hear me, hear me. Do not ignore that notice. Do not ignore that notice, because what that is telling you is that you have a limited period of time to act before your account will be subject to collections. So please act. Figure out what's going on. Log into studentaid.gov. Figure out what your options are to get your loans out of default. Figure out why your loans are in default. I will tell you, I talk to folks sometimes who didn't realize you could have multiple student loan servicers because they never logged into their account on studentaid.gov and were repaying many of their loans and didn't realize they had a couple of loans that were with a different loan servicer that weren't being paid on. And so those loans ultimately went into default, even though the rest of their loans were in good standing. If you need to receive assistance or learn more about your options, you can call the default resolution group. You can also call, which we call DRG. You can also call them if you're like, I see that I'm in default. I can't figure out which of my loans is in default. And if you have an older student loan type, you may need to contact another entity because you may have a different lender on your federal student loans, and they will tell you who you need to contact. And the number is here. And again, what's most important here is that you get your loans out of default and then that you develop a plan so that you won't default on your federal student loans again in the future. Next slide. Now, Selena talked to you before about the announcement that the Department of Education is going to transfer management of the default portfolio to Treasury. The big thing to know there is that we don't know when that change is going to take effect or what impact it's going to have on borrowers. Another really important flag is that right now, collections, those collection powers I talked about before, wage garnishment, Social Security offset, and tax refund seizure are all paused. So those collection powers are not happening right now. The most important thing to know about that is we don't know how long that pause is going to last. So if you learn that your loans are in default, please, please don't wait. Take steps to get your loans out of default now. So I'm going to say just one more time, please, if you do one thing today, log into your account on studentaid.gov and see if you have the default banner across the top. And if you do, please take steps today to figure out what your best options are to get out of default, and then work to develop a plan so that your loans stay in good standing in the future so you don't go into default again. Next slide, please. And Natalia, I will pass it on to you.
Thank you so much, Kira. Really appreciate all of the phenomenal speakers. Oh, my video isn't on. Apologies about that. Thank you for all of the wonderful speakers and our partners that have joined us today. We are so honored to have everyone on. And as Kira and Aisa and Sabrina, Ashley, and everyone said, we're so honored to have you on. We've had, nearly 500 people on this Tuesday afternoon take time out of their day to learn about your student debt options We can't be more grateful for you all being here. We want to talk just a little bit about, taking action. At Student Debt Crisis Center, and I'll be clear, our organization, and also we'll be joined by Julia Barnard shortly from the Debt Collective. They are also calling for a payment pause with all of this craziness going on. We have the move to Treasury, we have the ending of the SAVE plan, we have all of the crazy changes that are going to happen on July 1st. It's a lot, and we know that borrowers need a break. I'm not trying to overpromise anything, but as advocates, we want to keep fighting for you, and this is a way that we're doing it. So if you have, just a few seconds in your day, scan the QR code, sign our petition. We really want to just keep fighting as hard as we possibly can for you all and not accept the status quo. In addition, we continue to do our workshops. We know that, again, this is so much information. It's a lot. I encourage you all to take time when you get this recording to go through this in your own time, but we also break up all of this information into separate workshops. So upcoming in April, we have our SAVE workshop on April 8th at 8 p.m. Eastern. Then on April 15th, we have our public service loan forgiveness workshop where we'll go more in depth on each one of these programs. That's on April 15th at 8 p.m. Eastern. And then lastly, for April, we have our income-driven repayment workshop going over all of the current income-driven repayment programs and touching on the new RAP plan that will come out on July 1st. And that will be April 30th, different time at 7 p.m. Eastern. And I'm sure our team is sharing these links in the chat, and they will be in your follow-up email. If we kind of did a broad overview of all of the programs today, this is more in depth if each one of these or all of them apply to you. And with that, I want to thank all of our speakers. Thank you, Aisa, Kira, Selena, Sabrina, Ashley, for joining us. We really appreciate it. And at this time, I want to bring on Julia Barnard, Sabrina Ashley, Sabrina Calazans to help do our extended Q&A session.